At least like one thing. I'm literally 5 years. I mean, I've lived here for 10 years. Going on 10 years. I still haven't gotten used to it. So like, I really don't have an excuse. Like, half winter. Really? It's April. It's supposed to be summer in March. It's so fast.
It feels like we were on the trail literally yesterday.
I know. It's so weird how it's gone by so
I was listening to the news today and I was like, well, running. Like, I mean, obviously.
I was like, really to watch.
Yeah.
Should watch.
He was one of the impeachment voters too, right?
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. That's how I feel.
I was like, one shot in and I'm feeling good.
I know, me too. Let's do
I haven't come to a single
You haven't?
No, because I walk everything home.
Yeah.
So today,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It depends. Me, I'm still
I mean, here's the thing. Like, I love NBC, and they were gonna give me like
Whereas like everyone and their mother wants normal TV.
Yeah.
For you, dude, I'm the same way. I'm like, no thank you. All the same for me. Like reporting. Yeah, but like, they're like helpful and like giving you direction and stuff. Yeah. Oh my god, probably going to be, I'm sure. Yeah. Right? I learned Frank's actually starting to read the and everyone's like, hell no. Like their whole time was like, hell no, he's not gonna do that. So we'll see what happens. But we should all get together soon. The old gang, man.
Yes, I remember.
Get drinks, dinner, like the old days. It's been so long. Now that the weather is getting better, we should totally just do something. What's your schedule most days?
Is it totally? Yes, oh, that's just cute. I love those.
I just want to say hello again. Hey. It's one per. We had to run another network off too.
Well, tomorrow.
You don't count.
No, I'm gonna switch out with PK because he wants to.
Oh, he's going. Oh, okay.
But
I am
Yeah, you have to sit over there because we need to keep this open. The stills are rotating. So you're probably better off sitting there.
yeah, but that's I know.
Jake sometimes sits back here.
Cool.
He used to sit back over there.
I think that's my first year, like when I first worked in Europe, and then I was in New York, and then I came back, I came here, so, and definitely wasn't happy with it. Not the main. Did you ever see it? Yeah, I did. Oh, you did? Unclear. We are still kind of like, why does it know my dress? Was I on camera? Christine's like, keep it going.
Oh, is that your purse up there?
Yeah. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I was just trying to figure out who it was and if there was a seat for some reason.
Unclear. We extended the lease on our house here for 10 years. And we're just figuring out, like, my husband's job, like, really long term here, which is ironic because we're on the retired side of him in general. And my job is
Iowa based, right?
no, not really. His whole family lives here, but they do some Iowa stuff. And the person who started it from
Welcome to our life. Welcome to our life.
So we'll see. I mean, it's kind of nice that we're here, that we see people again, and like, I mean, it's been nice in Florida because we can go outside literally every day, and it hasn't been like, you know, raining sometimes or whatever. But usually at some point during the day, you can at least go outside.
Oh my god, your pictures all look amazing.
Thank
Fucking palm tree.
I know.
In your
Well,
face.
that's what I said. Like Derek and I were sitting on the porch like our last day, like we're really gonna miss that palm tree.
Oh my god, right.
It's the best.
It's really the best.
Yeah.
No, my sister. It's my sister.
There's a lot of palm trees in Ohio.
No, but my sister, she does look very good. Music.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's still like TBD. Basically, we were like figuring out on for what, and then
But you know what's also funny about that? The fact that it's like
I came yesterday and it was really weird.
That's the story that she wants to hear.
It's good. Or like
Have to wait till after. It's too elaborate. Yeah. It's pretty good story. Yeah.
maybe if they ever take
Okay.
yes, it's always we'll be here every week.
It's like a suburban. There's a park in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes you feel good about your life. You're taking it easy now.
Yeah, I know. Basically. I know. I'm so glad I got to meet you guys.
My first day was like
11. 7 years.
I've been there since Carter. Yeah, and like they know stuff that this Italian like they must have gotten Scotty before there. Those were black. He's all in New York now. He was City always wears black. He has gray hair. You know, Mr. Gorbachev tried on his wall. That was him. That's his photo, yeah. Yeah. He, every comment, every major comment. Well, jobs don't like that. How so? Because it's fucking people. That's the 20th century. Because there's confidence. It's not difficult to get a good shot. That's why they got it. It's like driving a car. Especially now with these cameras too. Technology is way more simple for these people.
He told him to 5 miles per hour after him.
And then you're like, I'll pay you.
I wish I had you probably can.
But you realize my every area, and they've been able to use these photos for all their
The film is
events.
visible.
So it's not like it's brand new, they're like,
Unfortunately.
if you don't know that equipment inside and out,
So like the most people are shocked their trauma you know, remember the roll itself we did? So they made it for that day. So they blow it up with line up and those get back in and to be honest, ever. I've used a 4x5. The 4x5 is smaller. You have to use it at the right mountain. So I have no idea what it's called. It's a good weapon. It's a good weapon. It's not made anymore, so I don't know. Probably the Kodak took it off. But small camera stores don't like that these days. They probably still have all the pencils. I mean, I never shot with all the cameras. I mean, listen, like enjoy doing it for hobby purposes. Yeah, exactly.
Right when I texted you that, Joey texted me.
Quick question about the extra. Is that 4.5 to 5.6 or the 6.3?
I was up there this morning and it looks great.
That's permanent feature.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's great.
Because like I'm trying to make a recommendation to the office too. I mean, I'm mainly using the other stuff all over. Yeah, but what's would it still be capable for also using it indoors? Like what's I guess.
I'll come check that out too. But that's
Well,
pretty
even
good.
in situations like
So instead, we would have them like off to the side, and then we'd have like a whole bunch of information pop up.
I don't know what the
You know? So we're doing that like 4 a.m.
we haven't had like a meeting yet. We're gonna get it.
No, he did. He wasn't. Is this the 12? Is it the 12 mini? I just got it, but I haven't. I'm keeping my 9. So wait, is this an Apple charger thing, or is this a?
Yeah, it's a different.
You can even have it on the back end.
What phone version? Yeah, it's the 12 mini. Oh, I got the Bluetooth. No. You probably have the 12. Yeah, so I got, I caught, I held it between 12 and 13. But I kind of like the display.
I do, I have a, so I use I'm using a premium version.
Is the, and the camera?
Building a relationship. Mm-hmm. No, actually, no, I don't have a boot club on this one. Okay. Very helpful. Okay. Really good at his job. She's always in town. Well, maybe we have our own.
Morning, everyone. Good morning on Earth Day. Here we are. As you know, today is Earth Day. This day, Americans celebrate our glorious natural heritage and renew our pledge to care for God's creation. On this day, the President is having a virtual meeting with leaders of 40 countries to address the climate crisis. Today, the President has taken historic, transformative action by announcing the bold pledge that America will cut our carbon pollution in half by 2030. To put this in perspective, President Obama committed to a 25% pollution reduction by 2025 in the Paris Agreement, President Biden, and it is anticipated that we'll reach that goal, and now President Biden is doubling that cut in 5 more years to 30-30. I think I got a lot of stuff here. In order to do that, we need the American Jobs Plan. When any of us, starting with President Biden, talk about climate, and you hear the president say this all the time, when I think about climate crisis, I think of one word: jobs. Jobs. Well, our chairs are advancing American Jobs Act, which we hope will be bipartisan. Millions of workers are in need of a good-paying job while our infrastructure is crumbling. Despite being the wealthiest country, we rank 13th globally in the quality of our infrastructure. You know the figures that the poor grades that the American Society of Civil Engineers gives us on the condition of our infrastructure. Now is the time for a once-in-the-century investment to create millions of good-paying jobs, ensure Americans can compete with any country in the world, and pave the way for economic growth for years to come. I say once in a century. It's early in the century. I'm sure others will have maybe something even bigger down the road, way down the road. To build back better, today is important. As a part of the For the People agenda, we reintroduced the powerful Drug Price Reduction Act, the Elijah Cummings Lower Drug Cost Now, in honor of our dear Elijah. This is about families. You've heard me say again and again that when we're out on the campaign trail or in Zooms and the rest, this is the cost of health care, especially prescription drugs, is debilitating for families. I've seen grown men cry because they just cannot meet the obligations that they have for their families if they have someone in drastic need of drugs on an ongoing basis. So that when we did the Affordable Care Act, it was essential because we could not sustain the cost of health care. It was unsustainable to individuals, to families, to small businesses, to corporate America, to the taxpayer. And one of the successes of the Affordable Care Act was to decrease the rate of increase of health care costs, which we succeeded in doing except for one thing: the cost of prescription drugs. And that's why we have been trying again and again to have legislation passed that enables the Secretary to negotiate for lower drug prices. In the beginning, when we started, it was about Medicare drug prices, but then in this legislation, it's about all drug prices. It is unacceptable that Americans have to pay 3 times more for prescription drugs for the very same drugs that are sold 1/3 of the cost overseas. Millions of Americans, as I say, cannot afford their medicines, particularly during the pandemic, where profits have soared for the pharmaceutical companies. Also this week, in the For the People agenda, we have legislation on the floor. This morning, we are passing H.R. 51. Some of you were with us yesterday when we talked about that with Eleanor Holmes Norton, to secure statehood for the District of Columbia, for Washington, D.C., whose residents pay taxes, fight in our wars, power our economy, yet do not have a full voice in our democracy. Yesterday, we passed 2 bills: a No Ban Act, a real cause for celebration to get rid of that act of discrimination, and the Access to Counsel Act, rejecting xenophobia and discrimination on the basis of religion, and reaffirming that all people, including immigrants, are entitled to civil rights, civil liberty, and dignity, access to counsel. Finally, but before I go on about the District of Columbia, let me just talk about this. I said yesterday when I was here, because Stanley was talking about his history of how long he was going back, and how far they went back on this issue, and I said, this District of Columbia statehood is in my DNA. And I bring you this picture. I mentioned it yesterday. I said, come to my office and see it. But until COVID enables you to do that, I brought it here. This is a picture of my father and the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt. It was the first time he had a hearing as the chair of the District of Columbia Appropriations Subcommittee. As chair of that committee, he was known as the unofficial mayor of Washington because, sadly, the Congress had so much say over the what happened in the District of Columbia. He did not support that. He was all for home rule and what would come after that. But this was an invitation he extended to Eleanor Roosevelt, and she, as I said, was the first lady to ever testify in Congress. And she testified about the conditions in St. Elizabeth Hospital, welfare institutions in the District of Columbia. And this is the picture that was taken. We're so proud of it. And again, proud to help, but help meant letting the District of Columbia decide for itself. So as everybody talks about how long they've been working on it, DNA, District of Columbia, statehood. So that was then. This is now. Next week we celebrate 100 days of the Biden-Harris administration. At that time, with the American Rescue Plan and President Biden's actions, we have made extraordinary progress in crushing the virus and recovering from the economic crisis. Yesterday, we reached the milestone, our country reached the milestone of administering 200 million shots in under 100 days. As we said in the rescue package, vaccines in the arms, money in the pockets, children in school, people at work. Now, 100. First he said 100 shots in 100 days, and then the success was so great that he succeeded 200 shots in less than 100 days. Half of the adults have at least one dose. Over 80% of seniors have had their first dose, up to 8% it went from 8% when he took office of seniors having their first shot to 80% of seniors having their first shot now. In the first month of the administration, also 80% of educators and school staff have received their first dose. Many are now fully vaccinated. This was quite an eventful week in many ways. In terms of the verdict in the Derek Chauvin murder trial, I want to salute our colleague, Representative Karen Bass, Madam Chair, for her tremendous work on the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Last year, May 25th, was a horrible day that we saw George Floyd murdered before our very eyes. By June 8th, the House introduced the Justice in Policing Act under Karen Bass's leadership. Soon after, in a hearing that would come up before it could come to the floor, we had a hearing. The family was here. They asked me, they said, Madam Speaker, can this bill be named for our brother and for his daughter to know that his life mattered? And I said, if you think the bill is worthy of George Floyd, we will name it for him. The bill survived the committee process, passed on the floor on June 25th, 1 month from the day of the assassination. And on March 3rd of this year, we passed the bill again. We know that this bill must be done. It must be enacted into law. And again, I want to salute Karen Bass for her ongoing efforts from the start to write a bill, working with all of the interested parties, the stakeholders in all of this, and then again now trying to reach consensus with the Senate. She is optimistic, she is fair-minded, she is open, and hopefully she will be successful in having a meaningful George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. I'm just so proud of the work that she has done. She's been working on these issues for years, as has our Black Caucus. That's why they were so ready. They were so ready to, when this happened, to have a bill ready by just the second week in June and on the floor and passed by 1 month since the most unfortunate tragedy. Any questions? You got?
Madam Speaker, if we could get an update on the 1-6 Commission. We know that you've said that you're
Yeah.
willing to equal number of Republicans and Democrats and equal subpoena power, but your Republican counterparts have said that they have not received your proposal
Yeah.
yet. Have you extended that offer to them, and what other parts of the proposal do you hope to change? And what, just in general, what is the state of the negotiation?
Well, there are three things in terms of the legislation: the makeup of the commission, the process within the commission, and the scope of the commission. Two objections that the Republicans had was that they wanted to have it even instead of the president having an appointment, just have it the House, the Democrats and Republicans, and we yielded on that. I think the president should have it, but nonetheless, the scope is what is important. If that's where their discomfort is, I yield on, we yield on that. The second part was on process, where they had a concern about the subpoena power. We have said that we would agree to the subpoena power that I think they would agree to, that is, that the chair and the ranking, not the ranking member, the chair and the vice chair would have to agree on a subpoena, or a majority of the committee, of the commission agree. That seems to address the subpoena. We'll see. We still don't know where they will be on scope, but some of this is, shall we say, interaction among members on committees, etc. And if we can come to agreement on the first two, why would they object to the scope, which is to find the truth of what happened on January 6th, when an insurrection descended upon the Capitol, I don't need to describe it to you, but our purpose is to find the truth for that. It's not about investigating one thing or another that they may want to draw into this. But I'm optimistic. Again, there are other options which I would not want to use because I want this to be bipartisan. And again, if the price of the confidence that the public would have in this is to make it a little harder to get some things done, so be it. But we have to agree on the scope.
But Republicans say they haven't heard from you yet. Have you forwarded
Well,
this
some
to-
Republicans have.
Can you
But
tell us who?
don't you worry about that. Don't you worry about that. The one step at a time in terms of, you okay with the subpoena? You okay with the? Then we will have. Now, we put out our proposal a few weeks ago. I didn't see anybody write it up at all. I mean, it was like, oh, nothing's happening. No, things were happening. It's a process. It's a process. What is your objection? How can we find common ground? Because at the end of the day, you weigh the equities. It's not about specifically, you weigh the equities. Is this a path to the truth? And that's what we'll find out, and I'm optimistic that we can. As I've said, the scope means so much that it's important to yield. And I listen to my members, too. That is to say, our chairman, Benny Thompson, of the Homeland Security Committee, he has been focused for a long time on domestic terrorism. A long time, all through the previous administration, this has been a focus of his, and even longer in his role as chair of the Homeland Security Committee. So I take some of my lead from him and other members about what the weighing of equities will get us in seeking the truth. But I think it's very important. And you know the provenance. I had the bill in 2001. I was author of the legislation for the commission then. So we all have a great deal of experience in terms of the makeup, the process, the who, and how is that defined? The numbers, yeah, but also who are these people? The process, timetable, resources for it, but most important, the purpose, the scope. Yes, sir.
Yes, good morning. Thank you.
What do you got?
So obviously, the DC bill will face a challenge in the Senate because of the filibuster and all. You guys have passed a lot of bills here, including later today, this DC statehood bill, that are piling up in the Senate. You and many of your fellow Democrats were critical of Mitch McConnell being unable to move a bill, or being unwilling, frankly, to move bills there. But isn't the same phenomenon happening there, and therefore should they get rid of the filibuster?
Well, you realize that Mitch McConnell is still the problem. It's not as if it was Mitch McConnell, now it's somebody else. No, Mitch McConnell is still the problem. And I don't get involved in any discussion on Senate rules. You know that. And I don't welcome any discussion from them on House rules. However, I do think we have discussion on issues and how the needs of the American people are met. We think our For the People agenda with the HR 1 for cleaner government and cleaner politics in our country is very important. We think HR 3 to lower the cost of prescription drugs. We think that HR 4, the Voting Rights Act, is something that shouldn't be blocked because of process. The list goes on. HR 5, the Equality Act, HR 6, Dreamers and the Promise Act that goes with that, HR 7, Fair Pay Act, Equal Pay for Equal Work, HR 8, background check legislation, as well as 1446 that goes with that, the South Carolina loophole, then HR 9, Protect the Planet Now, and of course we'll go back to HR 2, which was for the Moving America Forward, the jobs bill that we are hopefully working on, which we may. I hope we can do the bills without reconciliation, that we won't have bipartisanship. But should we not have any progress on all of these fronts because of that? Well, that's a debate for the Senate.
And isn't that a political problem that you face then? If you're moving these bills and they're stalled in the Senate for whatever reason, isn't the outcome basically the same as what you had when the Republicans were in the majority next week?
Well, let's see what the Senate does. Go ask them. Go ask them. Yes, ma'am.
Are you supportive of Congresswoman Bass formally negotiating with Republicans
Yes.
to try to come to a compromise?
Yes. I have briefed by her. I mean, again, the Black Caucus has been on this case for a long time. And so the provisions in the bill about chokeholds, about no-knock mandate, all of the provisions have been issues they have discussed for a long time. And they were ready. They were ready. And again, we cannot not improve the situation. And so, yes, I do. We couldn't be better served. She knows what our purpose is for all of us. She knows the particulars. When she wrote this bill, she was, at that time, still the chair of the crime subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee. She had a waiver to do two, one Foreign Affairs, one Judiciary. So she wrote it under that auspices, inspired by a tradition in the Black Caucus of having justice in policing, hence the name. And then, yes, so she has our full support. And I wish that you all would use her name more, because it is synonymous with justice. She is fair. She wants to get it done. This isn't it's the responsible prioritizing for accountability and justice. Yes, sir.
I wonder if you, on the police issue, Tim Scott said yesterday, qualified immunity, he's looking to change that. Obviously, it's a big piece of the police reform puzzle for Republicans and some Democrats, and he's suggesting that change the standard to have people sue departments instead of police officers. Yeah. I wonder how you view that. He said Democrats that he's talked to have been receptive to that.
Well, let me just say what I said earlier about other things. It's about the weighing the equities. Just to take one thing and say, would you do this or would you do that? It's weighing the equities. Qualified immunity is very important. The public listing, very important. If you agree that there should be a list, then why would it not be public? Chokeholds, that 100%. Again, no knock warrants and that kind of thing. So I trust Karen Bass's knowledge of the subject, but also her knowledge of the ramifications it would have on the people that we're trying to protect, which is everybody in our country, including our law enforcement officers. So I trust her to keep on the table what can be accomplished. And I don't think that, I think everybody knows this has to be a serious bill that will make a difference. So that's why I trust whatever they decide. Yeah. Okay? All right. What do you got?
Madam Speaker, two quick questions. Do you support the self-determination or statehood bills for Puerto Rico? And two, Senator Ossoff says that he will be looking into allegations of sexual misconduct by members of Congress against night shift custodians who clean the Capitol complex. What is Congress's responsibility to protect the custodians who clean these buildings?
Well, on the statehood issue, that's up to the people of Puerto Rico. That's up to them to decide whether they want to be a state. And then we'll see what happens after that. I love Puerto Rico. I felt embarrassed by how President Trump withheld resources for them after natural disasters and the rest.
Do you prefer one bill or the other, the self-determination or statehood?
No, I'm not for one bill, and it's up to the people of Puerto Rico to make a decision about their status. In terms of your second question, the chair of the House Administration Committee will be meeting with both the architect and the inspector general, and we'll look forward to seeing the report on any progress in this area. We don't have any place here for any question in terms of the safety in every sense of the word for our workers in the Capitol. Thank you all very much. Don't forget, 51st state, Eleanor Roosevelt, Thomas D'Alessandro Jr. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that something to be so proud of? The first lady to come to testify before Congress. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Sorry about